listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is J.A. Plosker, author of The Nobody Bible, Uncovering the Simple Wisdom in Ordinary Life, which has been honored numerous times, including the 2017 Bookvana Award winner, the 2017 National Indie Excellence Award finalist, and the 2017 International Book Awards finalist. J.A. has 2 degrees in religion, advanced degrees in social work and law, and has worked as a college instructor, social worker, and counselor. Now, his job title is writer. J.A., thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, J.A., wow. Okay, you seem to be very, very busy. You've written this book that everyone could use. How did you come up with this idea?
It's funny. I'm just a person out in the world who, I spent years wanting to write a book about, little things we do in our everyday life and things we can learn from other people's traditions that we can apply right now that make us happier, more peaceful people. And I came up with the idea because, I was talking to students, clients in my career, and it seemed a lot of people were really searching and looking for ways to be more spiritual, to be, more peaceful. And it occurred to me that so many of these wonderful ancient traditions that I was studying had these little pieces of wisdom that not only could we use right now, but that we're already using. So that was kind of how I came up with the concept itself. How I came to write the book was I really wasn't sure how to get it out there, because that's the whole nobody concept. Because I was thinking, who am I? I'm nobody.
Yeah.
So when it came to wanting to write a book, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners, have had this issue, is you just kind of get overwhelmed with the idea of getting a book made or out there. And you think, how's anyone going to find me? How am I going to do it? I don't have thousands of social media. Like, how do I do this? How do I do this? So I kind of met someone who inspired me. He said, keep teaching and keep writing, even if nobody comes. So he used the word nobody, and it hit me like a lightning bolt. Because I was like,
I can do that, right? I can attract nobody.
That's exactly. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't what I think it is. Because, here I am feeling like nobody in particular. Like, no one wants to see this and read this. But then I realized, now, wait a minute. The task ahead of me isn't selling books. The task ahead of me is telling a story. And once I released myself of that negative connotation of what nobody meant, and once I realized that everyone has a story to tell, I had been stuck on this idea of how to write this. I went home after that meeting, and I wrote the whole book in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Now it took it took years to edit and perfect.
Okay.
But I was stuck. And that just unlocked me. Something about it unlocked me. And, I had tried the traditional, agent publisher route before, after I had written the book. And I just kind of decided, what? I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there. So that's kind of the story of how it came to be.
And how did you contact publishers? Do you wrote query letters?
Yeah. So what I did was I had also written fiction manuscripts too that were just kind of sitting. The Nobody Bible was really the big idea that I was working on, but I had also written some fiction. So what I had done is, I made a spreadsheet, and I started to get on the internet, and I started to look up agents and who matches, who's interested in kind of philosophical work, who's interested in religious work, who's interested in spiritual work.
Sure.
And so I made lists and lists and lists and color-coded them. And when I would send to an agent, that was the moment of optimism. You'd put that entry in green. And then when the rejection came, you'd put that entry in red. So I went through that whole process. And I actually eventually did find an agent. So I was agented for a while.
Congratulations. Good.
Well, right. But,
yeah. Well, it just must, at the time, it must have felt very, very good, right?
It did, and it kind of arrived through serendipity. I had originally queried the owner of an agency, and then when that owner moved on, someone else picked picked my book, a fiction book that I was pitching out of the slush pile, and contacted me. And so my fiction actually was what was represented first.
Okay.
And so I told my agent at the time that I had this book that I was writing, and I skipped that step. I just went ahead and wrote the whole book. And the agent said, I want that book too. So both books actually came under representation, but it started with fiction. So then that agent queried the publishers, and actually, I actually ended that relationship with the agent, and found the publisher through other channels. So I actually found the publisher through a friend that made a recommendation that I didn't even know about. So that was kind of my journey. So you see, so I got that fiction represented, then I got that nonfiction represented, then I terminated that relationship and ended up finding a publisher outside of that. And of course, that's not the publisher who ultimately ended up publishing it, but that was a very non-traditional route to finding the agent and the publisher.
Well, I guess your story is good because you don't give up. It's not. You're still telling people, okay, even if a relationship doesn't work out, don't just stop. You can still seek other venues, right?
Well, absolutely. Look, the joke out there is, every author has a manuscript in a drawer.
Yeah.
So, look, this book spent time in a drawer. I mean, I wrote this whole thing, and then it spent time away from me. But I never forgot about it. I kept it alive by thinking about it. I kept it alive by checking in with it. I kept it alive by revising it, by editing it.
Right.
It's a check-in, and life took over from there. Instead of me trying to make this happen, life took over, and I got to tell you, it just happened.
Well, great. Congratulations.
That is really cool. So the Nobody Bible, is that your first published book?
Yes. So what I did was, when I was looking at the book contracts and I was kind of thinking about going with a publisher, I realized, this is going to be my first foray. This is going to be my first book that's out there. So my wife actually came to me and she said, look, I'll bet we can do this. I'll bet you and I can get this book out. So I researched everything I could about starting a publishing house, and I formed my own press. I formed Nobody Press, and I did everything from soup to nuts and put the book out because it's my first. And I was like, this is a special. I would absolutely use an agent again. I would absolutely go with a publisher in the future, but it would have to be the same process. Does this relationship serve the book?
Okay.
So that's I guess a piece of advice for listeners is, don't think that the panacea of publishing is always a publisher, is always an agent. If that doesn't serve your book, you can find another way. So I did it myself, and it was quite an experience.
It sounds ambitious. How do you go about starting a publishing company, and what did you do?
Well, so what did I do? I panicked. So there was that. So that's the necessary first step. And what I did is, I sat with a lot of trusted people in my life and talked to them about it. Okay. And I think that's important because before jumping into anything, I wanted to make sure first that this is really the route I wanted to go. And the first thing I did after I decided I wanted to do that is I got on the internet and I started typing. I learned everything I could learn about doing it. I set up an LLC, and I got a box that I could have my mail delivered to. I found a statutory agent that could receive legal information on my behalf. I did, I filed my paperwork. It took a long time. It took probably longer to do that than it did to write the first draft of the book.
Wow.
So, but the first thing I did is I set myself up as Nobody Press LLC.
And then you went out and found someone to edit the book, and then someone to actually print the book.
Well, okay, so I didn't have a formal editor in that sense, in the sense that I paid someone to edit the book. So the book had already been seen by some people in the publishing industry, and no edits were made at that point. So I thought, let me just keep this close and see what I can do with it. So what I did is I gave the book to beta readers, to trusted people that I trusted, and they reviewed the manuscript and gave me some really, really hard feedback.
Oh, okay.
Honest. Is that...
Well,
look,
that's what you want.
Look,
right?
Well, the Nobody Bible was originally much longer. That's all I can say about that. But they gave me that. I said, look, be brutal,
Maybe this
guys.
is the Old
And
Testament and you still have the New Testament in you.
Right, exactly. It's exactly. But they gave me really hard edits. And I had to sit down with this. Look, when you've got all the pieces in place, right? You want to go do this. You're in a hurry. You want to get this book out. I had to sit on it for a while. This is before the publishing company and everything. This was long ago. And I sat on it and I thought about it and I meditated on the book and I reworked it. And the key was, this is key. This is why the book is something I'm really proud of. I didn't rush it out there.
Excellent.
I didn't rush it.
Right.
I just couldn't do that. I edited it down and took that feedback and applied it. I cut and cut and cut and cut and cut from this. This book probably went through 20 to 30 edits. And that was so important. That was so important.
So patience. Right.
Patience. Well, that's don't rush.
Right.
Don't rush your book. You just don't do it. It's out there forever. Forever is a long time.
Sure.
So you want to take your time at the start so that you don't, lose gas halfway through the marathon.
Right.
So
At any point where you're like, this is just too much, I give up?
that's an interesting question. My wife and I really were the two that drove this. And, I have a new baby and I have a job that I do. So at the time, my daughter was very young. So we did this during her naps. We would quickly run to the computer and design things. And I would sit up at night until midnight, 1 a.m, when my daughter was sleeping and I'd be editing. I'd be learning about CreateSpace and I'd be learning about eBooks and Amazon and Lightning Source and ISBNs. And I taught myself and my wife taught myself. My wife's a graphic artist, but I taught myself graphic design stuff so that I could actually contribute to that conversation. I built websites. All of that had to take place as a third job.
Wow. Yeah.
And look, as great as
oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, as great of a feeling as it is to write a book, I have to remember that that's job 3, or 4 or 5. That's not the most important thing in my life, and I had to treat it that way. So that was important.
And what's your wife's name?
Melissa.
Melissa. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Congratulations, Melissa, also, because I know as a wife, it's you want your, congratulations. It's a lot of hard work for her also.
Right.
She was really the one that, when it came time to put this book out there, she looked at me and said, look, we can do this. And she always said we. She always said we. And so that meant everything to me. And so, I would say to people out there who were thinking about doing this, writing is very solitary, much like podcasting. You're kind of alone, either in front of them. But if there's someone somewhere, for some people it's a book group, if there's someone somewhere that can just give you that support, that's really important. I think some people think they have to be this lone writer in a cabin. Yeah. Well, I can tell you, look, I wrote the Nobody Bible with my blood, sweat, and tears, but that wasn't the end of the story. That wasn't even close, So if my wife said, we can do this, and we did, and it was really special to do it as a team like that.
Yes.
Well, I think that's great advice. I mean, we've talked to other authors who've started Facebook groups, to get beta readers or just to beta readers, or just to get some feedback so that they have a team behind them. And I think it's a great idea to, you're taking on this big adventure, this big endeavor. It would be great to have somebody you can lean on, or somebody who says, come on, let's go. I haven't seen anything new.
Right. Or, also maybe to push you, but also sometimes you get so involved in your own thoughts, you're thinking, no, it has to be this way, and then you need the outside help to say, oh, hold on, let's think of it from a different angle.
That, what you just said, that piece That's it. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's the whole piece, because I'd be sitting at like 1 a.m. poring over something, and she would come into the room and go, look, stop for now, sleep on it, and then talk to me about it in the morning. And in the morning, everything looked different. So really, writing a book wasn't for me about getting it done. It was about stopping, going back, and redoing. And I think that's the opposite of what you'll hear out there is, you hear keep going, and you absolutely should. But, there's also, every car comes with reverse for a reason.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
I used to live in Ohio as well. And I remember my parents, we all remember the kitty litter, and backing out.
Right, in the snow.
Yep. I remember going in reverse. And that was what made this book possible, is that if I would have put out the first few edits of this book, it would never have felt the way I think it feels now. It was going back and redoing and retracing my steps, and what Leah said, taking that time to rethink things, that really made it something special instead of just a project I was doing.
Did you feel some uneasiness in the world or within your own life, or to bring this book?
Or what was the goal of writing the book?
Well, there were multiple goals that kind of unfolded. At first, the exploration started off as, are there things I can do in my life to lessen anxiety or to have a new approach to the day so that I can feel better? And once I started to take a look at those things, I started to realize, now, wait a minute, in my counseling world, and when I was a social worker doing counseling, clients were asking a lot of these same questions. I was working with people who were struggling with addiction. I was working with people who were struggling with serious mental health issues.
Okay.
And they were looking for something, searching for something, just like I was. We weren't having the same experience in life necessarily, but we were interested in the same path.
Okay.
And then I was teaching religion and philosophy, and students were looking for this.
Yeah.
And then I was teaching social work, and social work students were looking for this. And I thought, well, wait a minute. The book can do multiple things. The book can be a guide to simple things we can do, right, in our everyday life to connect with ancient wisdom. But it can also be a way of promoting diversity. That's really important to me. I realized we're all nobody, all of us. That's the trick of the book. We're all nobody to each other until we make an introduction, right?
Sure. Right.
So I was like, well, now, wait a minute. Maybe one of the problems we're having in the world is that it's not that we hear a lot of hateful rhetoric from all corners of the world. And maybe the problem is we just don't know enough about each other. So I thought, well, look, the book can function as just a simple history book. It can function as a little guide to spirituality. It can also function as a way of promoting diversity across cultures. So I really wanted it to work on all those levels. And each of the chapters has questions to help the individual at the most granular level, to help the individual learn something about themselves, so that maybe when they step out into the world the next day for work, yes, they have maybe a little piece of advice they can take with them to the office, but maybe it'll encourage them to learn more about the people they work with. And maybe it'll encourage them to read the newspaper in a different way. Maybe they'll click on websites they hadn't clicked on before. So I wanted the book to do all those things. And whether or not it succeeded in doing that, I can't say. That's for each reader to decide. But that's really what I wanted to accomplish, is all those levels. And I knew it could be done, and that's why the book went through so many edits, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I really do believe everyone could benefit from this book.
Well, I hope so. I did a group around the book a few months ago, and people shared things with me about, some woman found out something new and wonderful about her heritage at the same time she was reading my book. And she realized, oh my goodness, I realized I'm already doing a lot of the things from that heritage I didn't even know I was doing. I said, well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
cool.
Then I had people come up to me and say, hey, I didn't know the life of Confucius. That was really interesting. Or someone else said, I've always wondered about Taoism. That's it.
Good.
You're not going to pick up this book and walk away and be, you're not going to get a PhD in religion. That's not the purpose. The purpose of the book is to walk away and go, maybe there's more I can learn. Maybe there's more I can do.
That's
so
great.
hopefully it accomplishes that.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful.
It sounds very cool, yeah.
So what about marketing the book? What have you been doing?
So when it comes to marketing, that's always
It's tricky.
Yeah.
Look, every writer is an introvert and an extrovert at the same time. I mean, that's a bold statement, and maybe it's not everyone, but that's how I feel about myself. I always define myself as an introverted extrovert. Okay. And the reason that that's hard is because one thing I really had to do was dive into social media. And it couldn't just be something that was passive. I couldn't just be an onlooker. So to promote my book, I had been blogging for years, but I had to really dive into social media, and it's a very long game. Mm-hmm. So right now what I'm doing is just kind of creating a presence online. I have, nobodiesview.com and the nobodybible.com. Those are the twin websites that support the book, but that's not enough. I went onto a site called powtoon.com, and which I have no financial interest in. Yeah. They were just a great website, and I made my own book trailer. I just did it myself, okay. And I taught myself. I sat in my office and taught myself how to use Powtoon. I just had to do it because it's a big marketing piece.
Right. And then how do you spell the name of that?
Oh, it's POWTOON.com.
Okay. Because your book trailer is very cool.
Oh, well, thank you. It took a lot of hours. I can still feel the beads of sweat from putting that together. But
I see you have other videos too that are similar to that. You made those also?
Yeah, and I'm going to be making more. I call them the 90-second nobody. My belief is, look, if I can't convey to you something simple that you can use spiritually or wherever, if I can't convey that to you in 60 to 90 seconds, then we have to rework it. So what those videos are is they're really short, quick ways for people to just take a quick break, have some fun, and learn something new. So right now they just kind of live on my website. I mean, I'm an instructional designer by trade, so I'm a writer, editor, instructional designer. So my job during the day is taking complex ideas like harassment or bribery. I take these really big concepts and I boil them down into trainings. Oh. So I apply that to my writing and my marketing, and those videos were an outgrowth of that.
Okay. Well, it seems like you have a lot going on, and
right.
Your Facebook, your websites. It looks like you have a lot going on, and interesting information too.
Right.
Well, the whole trick is getting found, and there's lots of tricks that people talk about, and for me the journey's been a little different. For me, I wanted it to be something a little more organic. It's not that I do nothing. It's just that I'm just very aware of the fact that social media is a two-way street. Marketing is a two-way street. It's all a long game, and it's about building relationships, right? So, I'm exclusively on Amazon right now. Well, why did I do that? I did that because my book is through CreateSpace with my own ISBN, and my ebook is on Amazon. The reason I only have it on Amazon right now is because I have so much else going on that right now I only have one distributor. That's Amazon. That frees me up to do other things. At least it did initially. I didn't have to update books on all other platforms. I just focus on Amazon primarily. And that allows me to focus more time on my social media presence and developing more free things that I can give away, information that I can give away, because I don't really have to worry about where my book is living. And I think that's an important piece to marketing. Marketing is the most time-consuming piece. Mm-hmm. So you want to make the writing and distribution pieces as streamlined as possible, at least in my opinion, so that you can focus your efforts on things that are a little more nebulous, like social media. I mean, it takes time to build followings. And yes. I use Amazon's free promotion. And once a quarter, I put my book up for free. I've had thousands of downloads from free promotions. Wow. I give my book away. I give my book away all the time.
And then people will talk about it and spread the
share
word.
It. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Yep. And you kind of have to let go of, not you don't have to do anything, but I had to let go of the idea of how many units did I sell? Because when you write a book and put it out there, it's a long game. It's not about how many books did I sell today. It's about how many relationships did I build? Or did I meet someone who maybe this changed their life in a certain way? So for me, marketing is really this meeting of getting exposure, yes, but also finding ways to build relationships with my readers. I just found out my book was accepted at a local library, and that
cool.
came with came with an invitation to be part of their annual book sale, which I'm going to do. And I'm going to stand there with my books at a table. And I'm just going to, as a teacher once said, who is my father, show up. Show up. Just show up.
Excellent.
Well, good luck on that day. That's great.
Thank you.
So I want to go back and ask more about the publishing company that you started.
Yes.
And why did you start it instead of just write the book, happy with the manuscript, and then go to Create Space and start selling it? What else? What am I missing in there? Why didn't you just do that instead of starting a publishing company?
Well, I think for me, I wanted a legal structure, right? So Nobody Press is a legal entity, and it that comes with certain protections. Mm-hmm. Also, I wanted to have. I felt like it would keep me. I'm trying to think of how to say this. It would keep me honest in a lot of ways. So I now own this publishing company, which comes with responsibilities, and it has a logo, and that logo goes on the spine, and it bought ISBN numbers, and those ISBN numbers go on the spine, and I own those numbers. Those are mine. And that book is a wholly owned piece of Nobody Press. And so there is something, I think, to be said for, I spent so many years writing the book. I didn't want to use a Create Space ISBN. I wanted full ownership of my property, and I have that. And for me in my life, I felt like the publishing route, starting my own publishing company, was a very, very small investment in what will be a very, very long writing career, I hope. Oh. So that publishing company has a website. That publishing company puts out books. That publishing company has legal protections. That publishing company is responsible for the copyright from the Copyright Office. So it gave me that good feeling. Plus, I'm an attorney in another life.
Right. Yes.
So, I think that's really important. You've invested so much time and so much effort. It was just a little step to start that company and to grab those ISBNs and to make it a product of Nobody Press.
Right.
And
cool.
And if I ever want to put out other people's books, which I'm not doing yet, but it gives me that opportunity.
Sure. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
You never know what's gonna happen in life.
College is right around the corner for your daughter.
You wake up and they're grown.
Right. And you might say, I could use a couple of books to publish so I can pay for a couple of those college books.
That's the best reason to market, right?
Yes. So what's the best advice you could give somebody who's working on their book now who hasn't yet published it?
The best advice is educate yourself. That's the first thing that comes to mind, and I'll tell you what that means. Google and YouTube are your friend.
Yes.
If you don't know what that means, figure out what that means. Google and YouTube are your friend. And look, when I set out to do this, when I put that publishing company contract in a drawer and turned back to my computer to do it, I realized I had to become the most educated person I knew about publishing. I learned about social media, refreshing a blog, creating a publishing company, learning about ISBN numbers, learning about entering contests. Then I had to go into another room and think about fonts, learn about book layout. Then I had to learn about... So educate yourself. Right. And I want to say this as well. I wouldn't be the author of the Nobody Bible if I really believed that you needed a publishing company and book layout. You don't. See, look, that was my journey. Okay, that's the author inside me. Mm-hmm. But I'm the author of a book that says, look, whatever works for you. And so educating yourself might be as simple as, how does Create Space work? How do I just get that ebook up so I can work on the next book in the series? If that's the piece that speaks to you, if that's what your primary goal is, that's the path you got to take. Because I took the path that everybody said you should take for years. And the result was nothing. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened. But then when I found a genuine path for the book, when I found a way forward, it took off like a freight train. So whatever way speaks to you. So educate yourself doesn't mean only educate yourself on how to start a publishing company. It means learn what you're dealing with. If you take a Create Space ISBN number, learn what that means. If you're going to put out ebooks and not paperbacks, then learn what that will do to your marketing efforts. I had to give away 18 books to people to do a book group, and I was thrilled to do it. And I was only able to do it because I had a paperback. So you really need to educate yourself, not just on how to be a publisher, but on what your publishing decisions mean for your book. And that's really the piece. Whatever you need to do, be the smartest person you know about it.
Great advice.
It is great advice, yeah. And you can
Yeah.
learn so much from Google and YouTube.
People were talking about how to lay out a book. I watched people unbox their books from CreateSpace because I wanted to learn, are the colors of the covers, because they use different printers for different batches. I wanted to learn about that. Well, I had to watch people on YouTube unbox books because I didn't have a book yet.
Yeah.
So that's why my cover is looks the way it looks. You know, that
Oh,
cover
yeah,
took a
black
long
and white.
time
Okay.
to design. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we wanted very few colors because we wanted a nice stark look. And we knew that if we were going through CreateSpace, we wanted to minimize the possibility for printing errors. Well, I didn't know that until I started looking it up.
Right. So tell us about the cover of your book.
We took a long, I said my wife was a graphic artist. So she and I sat down and we talked through the concept. And you have to remember something, when you're designing a cover, you're not just designing a book cover, you're designing a brand, right? So that brand has to convey your message. It has to look good on social media. It has to look good on blogs. It has to look good in all of your channels. So we came up with this idea of, look, why don't we have these three figures sitting? And that's very recognizable, right? So if you're looking at that on the internet, you know that this is not a book about the Bible. This is a book about world religions. So when you look at that cover, you immediately can identify meditation, and you can see that the guy in the middle is all of us.
Correct.
That we occupy an equal place in this world, even with the most enlightened people. We do things every day that reflect great wisdom. And that image took... My wife has a file on her computer that shows you the images that start with the first idea and take you all the way in a path to this cover. It must be 30, 40, 50 plates we went through to design this.
Well, now I have to encourage everyone who's listening to check out the show notes or go to our webpage or go to your webpage and see the cover so that you can understand the complexity of it. It looks simple, but it's very complex.
Well, and that's sort of the trick to the book, isn't it? There are these very complex teachings, but when you think before you speak, maybe that's how we defeat karma. When you go easy on someone instead of screaming and yelling, maybe you're piercing right to the heart of Taoism. So everything on the cover, even that font, took days. Did you see and you'll see there's red on the cover.
Yeah. Simple,
That red
ordinary.
was right, and you see that in the book trailer, right, if you watched it. So that piece was calculated.
Okay.
Not cold and calculating. It's meant to provide warmth. It's meant to invite the reader to take a very simple, ordinary journey into a very complex place. And this all takes work. It took weeks, it took months. We beta tested this. We ran this past people. Does this convey something to you? What does it convey? So
Excellent. That's great advice for people listening to do that with their cover, because I imagine there are some people who just say, oh, I like this, whatever it is, sunset flower or whatever, and just go with it instead of, I think it's a great idea, beta testing your cover.
Right, correct. That's something new that we have not heard before.
And your fonts. If you turn the book over, you'll see little red dots. You'll see a halo there. You'll see a guy looking out of a window. All of those pieces are meant to talk to the reader in a very specific way. And so when you open the book, that font, the space between the sentences, the spaces between the quotes, all of that, every piece of this book was crafted in a specific way to help the reader get through the book in a peaceful, quiet, fun way.
Wow.
But you wouldn't know that, and you're not supposed to know.
Right.
Well, you're
Right.
not supposed to know
Yeah.
that, but the only reason a white wall exists is because there's something that has color that's stuck on it. So the white spaces of the book,
Mm-hmm.
between the letters, between the graphics, that's the message of the book. So,
Yeah, well, congratulations
It's
on
very
being
cool.
so detailed about all
Right.
these, the thinking process that you went through. I think it's pretty neat.
And thanks for sharing like the behind the scenes of the book. I mean, we don't get this very often, that somebody gives us such detail on what they were thinking when they were putting it together. I think you pick up a book and you're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Those letters are good size. I can read that.
Well, I share stories in the book from my life. Now, I'm a pretty private, person, but I share stories in the book about my life. And really, when you read the Nobody Bible, you're going behind the scenes of your own life. And if I'm asking you to do that as a reader, well, then I have to do that myself. Otherwise, it comes across as disingenuous. When you're writing your book, you have to constantly be thinking, is this genuine? Even if it's fiction. If it feels contrived, readers are smart people. That's why they're reading. So people can pick up.
It's a good bumper sticker.
Well, right. The author inside is a very fragile person when we're writing. And so I want it to just be right there. And look, if any of your listeners email me, I'm going to say, can you tell me more about this? I do but there are some things we don't share as people, but there are other things we do. And I have no qualms about telling people about all of the things that went into this book. And because the book, the cover and the words, like we said, the layout, all has to convey the message of the book. It has to be spaced in a certain way. It has to be readable in a certain way. The font has to speak to you as well. If you look at the font on the cover, it's simple, ordinary font.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Simple,
It's gotta be
ordinary, once again, your two
right.
words.
It's got to be consistent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And my name, I didn't even want to put my name on the book because it's the Nobody Bible. So my name doesn't occupy a prominent place on there because, quite frankly, it's your journey.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not my journey.
Right. Yes. Right.
I'm hanging out at home with my kiddo and having my journey.
Right.
Yeah.
So the books are art and books are a craft. And so, I took that very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
My wife took that very seriously.
Right.
Sure.
Well, that sounds like a great team.
Yeah, it was fun.
So how's a good way for our listeners to get in touch with you if they wanted to ask you a question about that or anything?
Well, they can email me. I have info@nobodypress.com, and we're always available on Facebook and Twitter at Nobody's View. And if they want to take a look at nobodysview.com or the nobodybible.com, they can join us there. I'm hoping to be launching a podcast, actually, in the next few months. And so I've started a group at Facebook called Nobody Nation. So they can join at Nobody Nation. But, I'm just I want to get out there and meet people and have real conversations with people about their experience, not only as spiritual people, but also as writers. So, you don't have to, it doesn't just have to be the book you contact about. So it'd just be fun to hear from people and have that dialogue.
Well, we'll join the Facebook group. It sounds cool.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'll seek you out and invite you. I think what you do is pretty special.
Well, thanks.
To remind people every week there is an author inside you. That's the theme of the Nobody Bible is, look, no matter what you think you are, there are so many more wonderful things inside of you than you even imagined. And part of that is being an author. And I just hope that people never give up. If you have a book in the drawer, please just think about it once in a while, dust it off, edit it.
Open that drawer.
Exactly. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, well, thanks.
Well, thank you.
And thanks for joining us today. I mean, it was great talking to you, J.A.
Yes, very.
I mean, a wealth of knowledge, and it was really cool.
Well, it was an it was an absolute pleasure. I just really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Jay, for speaking to us on our podcast. It really was an enjoyable conversation.
If you have a friend who's interested in writing a book, please let them know about the author inside you.
Until next time.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.